The crimson moon of Zerath cast an eerie glow across the ancient palace walls as Princess Lyralei stood on her balcony, watching the blood harvest ceremony below. Her pale blue skin shimmered in the moonlight, and her silver hair flowed like liquid mercury down her shoulders. At 200 years old, she was considered young for her species, but the weight of royal duty pressed heavily upon her heart. The Zerathians were an ancient race of beings who had mastered space travel long before humans discovered fire. They possessed an elegant beauty that could mesmerize any creature, but they carried a curse that bound them to survive on the life essence of other beings. Unlike the vampires of human folklore, the Zerathians could drain energy without killing, though they often chose not to show such mercy to their enemies. Princess Lyralei had grown tired of the endless cycle of conquest and feeding that defined her people's existence. Her father, Emperor Vorthak, ruled over 17 star systems with an iron fist, and his armies were feared across 3 galaxies. The Zerathian Empire had never known defeat, and their princess was expected to continue this legacy of dominance. "My daughter," Emperor Vorthak's deep voice echoed from behind her. His massive form filled the doorway, his forearms crossed in disapproval. "The council awaits your decision regarding the marriage proposals." Lyralei turned slowly, her violet eyes meeting her father's burning red ones. "Father, I have told you repeatedly that none of these suitors interest me. Prince Zarthan of Vela is a brute who enjoys torturing prisoners. Lord Malpheus of the Crimson Fleet cares only for expanding his wealth through slave trading. And Duke Zirian." She paused, her expression showing disgust. "He has made it clear he wishes to use our union to challenge your throne." The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "You speak as if you have a choice in this matter. You are the heir to the greatest empire in known space. Your marriage will secure alliances that will expand our dominion for centuries to come. What if I told you I had found someone else?" Lyralei asked quietly, her hands gripping the balcony railing. "Someone who has captured my interest in ways these political arrangements never could?" Vorthak's laugh was cold and bitter. "Impossible. You have had no contact with anyone outside our inner circle. The only beings you encounter are servants, guards, and the occasional diplomat. None of them would dare approach you romantically, and none would be worthy of consideration." Lyralei smiled mysteriously. "You assume too much, father. Your surveillance is not as complete as you believe." The truth was far more complicated than her father could imagine. 3 months ago, during a diplomatic mission to the neutral trading station of Babylon 7, Lyralei had encountered something unprecedented. While her father negotiated with various alien leaders, she had slipped away from her guards to explore the station's famous cultural district. It was there, in a small cafe that served beverages from dozens of worlds, that she first saw him. He was human, a species her people considered primitive and barely worth notice. Humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and most galactic powers viewed them as curious newcomers with little to offer. But this human was different. His name was Marcus Chen, and he worked as a xenobiologist studying the various species that passed through Babylon 7. Unlike most beings who either feared the Zerathians or tried to curry favor with them, Marcus treated her with simple, genuine kindness when she introduced herself as a regular traveler. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours. Marcus spoke passionately about his research into different alien cultures, his desire to understand how various species had evolved to survive in hostile environments. He was particularly fascinated by energy-based life forms and symbiotic relationships between different species. When Lyralei carefully revealed her true nature, expecting fear or revulsion, Marcus instead became more intrigued. He asked thoughtful questions about her people's biology, their history, and their culture. He treated her vampiric nature as simply another interesting adaptation, no different from the way some species photosynthesized or others could survive in vacuum. "I don't understand why that would make you evil," Marcus had said when she explained how her people survived. "Lots of species are predators. The important question isn't what you need to survive, but how you choose to get it." That simple statement had shaken Lyralei to her core. Throughout her life, she had been taught that her people's strength gave them the right to take what they needed from weaker species. The concept that there might be ethical ways to meet their biological needs had never occurred to her. Over the following weeks, they met in secret whenever possible. Marcus shared stories of human exploration and discovery, of the way his people had slowly learned to work together despite their differences. Lyralei told him about Zerathian art, music, and literature, the beautiful aspects of her culture that existed alongside its darker traditions. More importantly, Marcus helped her see possibilities she had never considered. He suggested that the Zerathians could form mutually beneficial relationships with other species instead of simply conquering them. Many species produced excess life energy that could be harmlessly shared, and the Zerathians' advanced technology could offer tremendous benefits in exchange. Your people could be protectors instead of conquerors, Marcus had suggested during one of their clandestine meetings. Think about it, you're incredibly powerful and nearly immortal. Instead of using those gifts to dominate, you could use them to help defend weaker species from real threats. The idea was revolutionary, and it sparked something in Lyralei's heart that she had never felt before: hope for a better future. Now, facing her father's anger, she knew the time had come to make her choice. Father, I have fallen in love with someone who sees me not as a political tool or a conquest, but as an individual worthy of respect and affection. Emperor Vorthax's expression grew thunderous. Love? You speak of love as if it matters in affairs of state. You will marry whoever serves the Empire's interests, and you will do so within the next lunar cycle. And if I refuse? Lyralei asked, though she already knew the answer. Then, you will be stripped of your title and banished from Zerathian space. You will become nothing more than an exile, wandering the galaxy with no home, no family, and no purpose. Vorthax's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Choose wisely, daughter. The Empire offers you everything. What could this mystery suitor possibly provide that compares? Lyralei thought of Marcus's gentle smile, his infectious curiosity about the universe, and his unwavering belief that beings from different worlds could learn to understand and care for each other. She thought of the future he had helped her imagine, where her people could be forces for good rather than instruments of oppression. He offers me the chance to become who I was meant to be, she said softly. Not just a princess, but a bridge between worlds. Her father's expression shifted from anger to something approaching pity. You have been deceived by fantasies, child. The universe is not a place of cooperation and understanding. It is a place where the strong survive and the weak serve. This is the natural order, and it has served our people well for millennia. Perhaps, Lyralei replied, it is time for a new order. Before her father could respond, she spread her wings, magnificent appendages that resembled a bat's but shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence, and launched herself from the balcony. As she soared through the night sky toward her hidden ship, she could hear her father's roars of rage echoing from the palace behind her. The journey to Babylon 7 took 2 days at maximum speed. During the long hours in hyperspace, Lyralei had time to consider the magnitude of what she was contemplating. She was about to abandon everything she had ever known for a human she had met only a few times. By the standards of her people, it was madness. But Marcus had shown her something her own people never had, the possibility of being loved for who she was rather than what she represented. In their conversations, he had never once asked about her wealth, her political connections, or what advantages a relationship with her might bring. He was interested in her thoughts, her dreams, her fears, and her hopes for the future. When she arrived at Babylon 7, she found Marcus in his laboratory, bent over a microscope studying samples from a newly discovered silicon-based life form. He looked up as she entered, and his face lit up with genuine pleasure at seeing her. Lyralei. I wasn't expecting you back so soon. How did the family gathering go? He had no idea that her family gatherings involved planning the conquest of star systems and the subjugation of entire species. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I need to tell you something important about who I really am. Over the next hour, she revealed everything. Her true identity as a princess of the Zerathian Empire. Her people's reputation as ruthless conquerors. The arranged marriage her father demanded. The choice she now faced between duty to her empire and the feelings she had developed for him. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious as the full scope of her revelation became clear. When she finished, he sat quietly for several long minutes, processing what she had told him. So, he finally said, "You're telling me that you're royalty from a species that most of the galaxy fears, your father wants you to marry someone else for political reasons, and you're considering giving up your inheritance to be with me?" "Yes," Lyralei whispered, afraid to see disgust or fear replace the warmth in his eyes. Instead, Marcus stood up and took her hands in his. "The question isn't whether I'm honored by your feelings, because I am. The question is whether you're really sure this is what you want. You're talking about abandoning your entire world, your family, your future as a leader. That's not a decision you should make lightly." Lyralei felt her heart swell with emotion. Even now, when she was offering him everything, Marcus was more concerned about her well-being than his own interests. "I have thought of little else for weeks," she admitted. "Marcus, you have shown me that there are other ways to live, other ways to use power. My people could be so much more than they are, but they will never change as long as they follow the old paths. If I stay and accept the marriage my father demands, I become part of that system. If I choose you, I choose the possibility of something better." Marcus studied her face carefully. "And what exactly are you choosing? I'm not wealthy or powerful. I'm not even from an advanced species by galactic standards. All I can offer you is my love and my belief that individuals can make a difference in the universe. That," Lyralei said, stepping closer to him, "is more than anyone has ever offered me before." When Marcus kissed her, it was nothing like the energy-draining feeding her people practiced. It was warm and gentle and full of mutual affection. For the first time in her long life, Lyralei understood what it meant to share something rather than take it. Their moment of happiness was interrupted by the sudden wailing of alarms throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the laboratory in flashing red as automated voices announced an incoming fleet of unknown vessels. Marcus and Lyralei rushed to the nearest viewport, and her heart sank as she saw the distinctive crimson hulls of Zerathian warships emerging from hyperspace. Her father had found her. "We need to get you out of here," she said urgently, grabbing Marcus's arm. "My father won't hesitate to destroy this entire station to retrieve me." But Marcus shook his head. "I'm not running. If you're really choosing me over your old life, then we face this together." As they watched, one of the Zerathian ships broke away from the fleet and approached the station's docking bay. Lyralei knew that her father would be on that ship, along with enough warriors to overwhelm any resistance the station might offer. "Marcus, you don't understand. My father has never been defied. He won't just demand that I return home, he'll want to make an example of you to ensure this never happens again." "Then, we'd better make sure we give him something to think about," Marcus replied with a determination that both impressed and terrified her. The communication system crackled to life, and Emperor Vortak's voice filled the laboratory. "Princess Lyralei, you will report to Docking Bay 7 immediately. Your period of rebellion is at an end." Lyralei looked at Marcus, seeing her own resolve reflected in his eyes. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. "No, father," she said, activating her own communication device. "My rebellion has just begun." The silence that followed was more ominous than any threat could have been. Lyralei knew her father well enough to recognize that his fury had moved beyond words into the realm of action. "Stay close to me," she whispered to Marcus as they prepared to leave the laboratory. "Whatever my father tries, remember that I chose you. That choice is more important than anything else." As they walked toward what might be their final confrontation, Lyralei felt a strange peace settle over her. For the first time in her life, she was walking toward a future she had chosen for herself, guided by love rather than duty, hope rather than tradition. The corridor ahead led to the docking bays, where her father waited with the might of the Zerathian Empire behind him. But it also led to the possibility of something unprecedented, a love that could bridge the gap between worlds and, perhaps, change the course of galactic history. Behind them, in the laboratory they were leaving, Marcus's research lay scattered across workbenches, evidence of his dream to understand and connect the diverse species of the galaxy. Ahead of them lay the unknown consequences of their choice to put love before politics, understanding before conquest. The station's corridors seemed longer than usual as they walked hand in hand toward their destiny, but neither of them looked back. Docking Bay 7 buzzed with nervous energy as station security forces took defensive positions behind makeshift barriers. Commander Sarah Walsh, the station's head of security, had seen many tense diplomatic situations during her 15 years at Babylon 7, but nothing quite like this. The Zerathian Empire's reputation for swift, brutal retaliation was legendary throughout the galaxy. All civilian personnel have been evacuated from this section, her lieutenant reported, his voice tight with anxiety. But, ma'am, our weapons won't even scratch their hull plating. If they decide to take the princess by force, then we do our job anyway, Walsh replied grimly. This station represents neutral space. We don't hand over political refugees, regardless of who's demanding them. The massive docking bay doors began to cycle open, revealing the sleek, predatory form of a Zerathian assault cruiser. The ship's crimson hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and energy readings showed weapon systems that could vaporize the entire station within minutes. As the ship settled onto the landing platform with barely a whisper, its boarding ramp descended like the tongue of some enormous beast. Emperor Vorthak emerged first, his imposing figure radiating menace even in the artificial gravity of the station. His forearms were encased in ceremonial armor that doubled as a personal shield generator, and his burning red eyes scanned the docking bay with predatory intelligence. Behind him marched 12 of his elite guard, warriors who had conquered worlds and whose mere presence could drain the life force from most beings. Their weapons were works of art as much as instruments of destruction, crystalline energy cannons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. But it was the figure who emerged last that caused even the hardened security forces to step back in fear. This was Vorthak's war counselor, Zirian the Soul Render, a being so ancient and powerful that his very existence had become legend throughout the galaxy. His pale, elongated form seemed to flicker between dimensions, and the temperature in the bay dropped several degrees simply from his presence. "Where is my daughter?" Vorthak's voice echoed through the bay like rolling thunder, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Bring her to me immediately, and perhaps this station will survive the next hour." Commander Walsh stepped forward, her hand resting on her sidearm despite knowing it would be useless. "Your Majesty, Princess Lyralii has requested sanctuary under the Babylon 7 Accords. As long as she remains on this station, she is under our protection." Vorthak's laugh was like the sound of stars dying. "Your protection? Commander, I have conquered entire civilizations older and more powerful than your species. Your protection is meaningless." "It may be," Walsh admitted, "but it's still the law here. If you want your daughter, you'll have to convince her to come willingly." The Emperor's four eyes began to glow with increasing intensity, and several security officers stumbled as they felt their life energy being drawn away. But before Vorthak could respond with violence, another voice cut through the tension. "Father." Every head in the bay turned as Princess Lyralii entered through the main corridor, her hand firmly clasped in Marcus's. She had changed from her casual station attire into her royal robes, deep purple fabric that seemed to move with a life of its own. Her silver crown caught the harsh lighting of the bay and threw prisms of color across the walls. "Lyralii," Vorthak said, his voice softening slightly despite his anger. "You have caused me great concern. Come, we will return home and discuss your future like a civilized family." "I am home, Father," Lyralii replied, her voice carrying clearly across the vast space. "For the first time in my life, I am exactly where I belong." Vorthak's gaze shifted to Marcus, and the human felt as though he was being examined by a force of nature. The Emperor's telepathic abilities probed at Marcus's mind, searching for signs of deception, coercion, or hidden motives. What he found instead surprised him. Marcus's thoughts were remarkably clear and focused. There was no fear, no greed, no desire for power or position. Instead, Vorthak sensed genuine affection for his daughter, a deep respect for her intelligence and strength, and an unwavering belief in her capacity to choose her own destiny. "You are the human," Vorthak said finally. "The one who has corrupted my daughter's thinking with impossible dreams." "Your Majesty," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the overwhelming presence before him, "I haven't corrupted anything. I've simply shown Lyralii that there are other ways to live, other ways to use power. She's made her own choices. choices based on naive fantasies about the nature of the universe, Zirian interjected, his voice like cold wine through a graveyard. You speak of cooperation and understanding, but you have never faced the harsh realities of galactic politics. The strong rule, the weak serve. This has been the way since the dawn of civilization. Marcus took a step forward, surprising everyone in the bay. With respect, counselor, that's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps civilizations trapped in endless cycles of violence. Yes, the galaxy can be dangerous, but that doesn't mean we have to choose between conquering others or being conquered ourselves. He gestured toward the diverse crowd of station personnel who had gathered to witness the confrontation. Look around you. This station hosts hundreds of species, many of whom have been enemies for centuries. Yet here they coexist peacefully, trading goods and knowledge instead of trading laser fire. It can be done. Vorthak studied the scene Marcus indicated, his expression thoughtful. It was true that Babylon 7 represented something unique in galactic politics, a place where former enemies worked side by side, where conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Temporary arrangements, he said dismissively. When resources become scarce or territorial disputes arise, these pretty alliances will crumble. They always do. Then, why not help build something stronger? Lyralii interjected. Father, our empire is vast and powerful, but it's also isolated. We rule through fear, and fear breeds resentment. Eventually, someone will unite our enemies against us. Wouldn't it be better to have allies instead of subjects? The conversation was interrupted by a new arrival. Through the bay's secondary entrance came Dr. Elena Vasquez, Babylon 7's chief medical officer, accompanied by Ambassador Khan of the Centauri Republic. Your Majesty, Dr. Vasquez said, approaching cautiously, I hope you'll forgive the interruption, but I felt you should know something about your daughter's activities here on the station. Vorthak's eyes narrowed dangerously. Explain. 3 weeks ago, there was an outbreak of Helios fever in the station's lower levels. It's a disease that affects energy-based life forms, and it was killing the Solari refugees who had come here seeking sanctuary. Our medical technology couldn't help them, the disease feeds on the same energy sources they need to survive. She paused, glancing at Lyralii with obvious admiration. Your daughter heard about the outbreak and volunteered to help. She spent 4 days in the quarantine zone, using her natural ability to absorb energy to literally draw the disease out of the infected Solari. She saved 47 lives. Ambassador Khan, a tall, crystalline being whose body refracted light like a living prism, stepped forward. Princess Lyralii asked for nothing in return. She simply saw beings in need and chose to help them. Many of those she saved were children. The revelation clearly surprised Vorthak. In Zirathian culture, displaying weakness or compassion toward inferior species was considered a serious character flaw. Yet he could see the respect and gratitude in the eyes of the diverse crowd gathered around them. Lyralii, he said slowly, why did you not tell me of this? Because I knew you would disapprove, she replied honestly. You would see it as weakness, as beneath the dignity of imperial royalty. But, Father, using my gifts to heal instead of harm felt more powerful than any conquest I've ever witnessed. Marcus squeezed her hand supportively. That's when I knew I was falling in love with her, he said, addressing Vorthak directly. Not because she was beautiful or powerful, but because she chose to use her strength to protect the vulnerable. That's the mark of true nobility. Zirian's expression grew contemplative. As war counselor, he had studied countless civilizations throughout galactic history. There is precedent, he admitted reluctantly. The ancient builders became the most respected species in the galaxy not through conquest, but through the wonders they created and shared. The Eternal Archive maintains its influence not through force, but because others need access to their knowledge. Exactly, Lyralii said, her excitement growing. Imagine if the Zirathian Empire became known not as conquerors, but as protectors. Imagine if our strength was used to defend trade routes, to mediate disputes, to help younger species develop safely. We could become the guardians of galactic civilization. Vorthak was silent for several long minutes, his forearms crossed as he considered his daughter's words. Around him, his elite guard waited for orders that didn't come, while the station personnel held their breath in anticipation. "You propose to revolutionize thousands of years of imperial policy," the emperor said finally. "To transform our entire culture based on the dreams of a single human and the naive idealism of a young princess." "I propose to evolve," Lyrelii replied. "Father, you taught me that adaptability was the key to survival." "Well, the galaxy is changing. Younger species are forming alliances, sharing technology, creating new forms of cooperation. If we don't change with them, we'll eventually find ourselves outnumbered and outgunned by united enemies." Marcus stepped closer to Vorthak, surprising everyone with his boldness. "Your Majesty, you have the opportunity to be remembered as the emperor who transformed the greatest military force in the galaxy into something even greater, a force for peace and prosperity that benefits everyone." "And if I refuse?" Vorthak asked, though his tone had lost some of its earlier menace. "If I order my daughter to return home and abandon these fantasies?" "Then, you'll lose her," Marcus said simply. "Not just to me, but to everything she could become. She'll spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been possible if you had trusted her vision instead of clinging to the old ways." The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected sound: laughter. Not the cold, mocking laughter Vorthak had displayed earlier, but genuine amusement. "You are either the bravest human I have ever encountered," the emperor said, "or the most foolish. Perhaps both." He turned to his daughter, and, for a moment, the centuries of royal protocol fell away, leaving only a father looking at his child. "Lyrelii, are you certain this is the path you wish to walk? Once taken, there may be no returning to the life you have known." "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied. "Father, I love you, and I love our people. That's exactly why I want to help them become something better than conquerors. We have so much to offer the galaxy beyond fear and domination." Vorthak looked around the docking bay one more time, taking in the diverse array of species who had gathered to witness this unprecedented meeting. He saw hope in their faces, and curiosity, and the kind of respect that couldn't be demanded or imposed, only earned. "Very well," he said at last, his decision sending shockwaves through both his entourage and the station personnel. "You have 1 year to prove that your vision can work. I will arrange for you to be assigned as Zerathian ambassador to this station, with full diplomatic immunity and the resources to implement your experimental policies." Lyrelii's eyes widened in amazement. "Father, you're serious?" "I am always serious, daughter." However, his voice grew stern. "If this experiment fails, if your idealism proves as naive as I suspect, then you will return home and accept the marriage alliance with Duke Zirian. The Empire's needs must come before personal desires." Zirian himself seemed surprised by this development. "My emperor, surely the decision is made," Vorthak interrupted. "My daughter wishes to prove that there is a better way to wield power. Let her try. If she succeeds, the Empire will benefit from new forms of influence and control. If she fails, she will have learned valuable lessons about the realities of leadership." He turned to Marcus, his 4 red eyes burning with intensity. "Human, you have asked for my daughter's hand. Very well, you shall have it, along with all the responsibilities that come with joining the imperial family. Disappoint her, and you will discover exactly why the Zerathian Empire has never known defeat." Marcus felt the weight of the emperor's gaze like a physical force, but he met it steadily. "Your Majesty, I promise you that I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the trust she's placing in me." "See that you do," Vorthak replied. Then, surprisingly, he extended one of his 4 hands toward Marcus. "Welcome to the family, son-in-law. Try not to get yourself killed in the first week." As Marcus shook the emperor's hand, he felt a strange tingling sensation, as though energy was flowing between them. Later, he would learn that this was a traditional Zerathian bonding ritual, creating a psychic link that would allow Vorthak to monitor his intentions and emotional state. The rest of the ceremony proceeded with surprising efficiency. Zerathian royal weddings were typically elaborate affairs lasting several days, but Vorthak had decided on an abbreviated version that could be completed within the hour. Dr. Vasquez served as the human witness, while Ambassador Tan represented the galactic community. Commander Walsh provided the station's official blessing, and even some of the Emperor's elite guard seemed to approve of the unconventional arrangement. When Lyralii and Marcus exchanged vows, they did so in both Zerathian and Standard Galactic, creating a bridge between their two cultures that symbolized their hopes for the future. "I promise," Lyralii said, her voice carrying clearly through the bay, "to love you not as subjects love rulers, but as equals choosing to build something beautiful together." "I promise," Marcus replied, "to support your vision of a better galaxy, and to never let fear or tradition prevent us from reaching for something greater than ourselves." The kiss that sealed their union was witnessed by representatives of dozens of species, many of whom had never imagined such a moment was possible. In that single gesture, a human and an alien vampire princess demonstrated that love could indeed transcend the boundaries that typically divided the galaxy's inhabitants. As the ceremony concluded, Vorthak addressed the gathered crowd one final time. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy that Princess Lyralii speaks with the full authority of the Zerathian Empire in all matters pertaining to her diplomatic mission. Any who harm her or her husband will answer to me personally." The implied threat was unmistakable, but so was the recognition he was giving to their union. By acknowledging Marcus as his daughter's husband, Vorthak was effectively granting him a form of imperial protection that few non-Zerathians had ever enjoyed. As the Emperor and his entourage prepared to depart, he pulled his daughter aside for a private word. "Lyralii, I still believe you are being naive about the true nature of the universe. But you are also intelligent, resourceful, and stronger than you realize. If anyone can make this impossible dream work, perhaps it is you." "Thank you, Father," she replied, embracing him with genuine affection. "I won't let you down." "See that you don't," he said, but his tone was gentle rather than threatening. "And remember, you may have chosen love over duty, but now your duty is to make that love serve the Empire's interests. The two are not as incompatible as you might think." As the Zerathian ships departed from Babylon 7, they left behind a galaxy that would never be quite the same. News of the alien vampire princess who had chosen a human husband spread quickly through diplomatic channels, sparking conversations about the possibilities for cooperation between species that had previously seemed incompatible. For Marcus and Lyralii, however, the real work was just beginning. They had 1 year to prove that love could be a foundation for a new kind of diplomacy, that understanding could triumph over fear, and that even ancient empires could learn to change. Standing together on the observation deck, watching the stars wheel overhead, they both understood that their wedding day was not an ending but a beginning, the start of an experiment that could reshape the very nature of galactic civilization. 6 months into their unprecedented diplomatic experiment, Princess Lyralii and Marcus Chen had transformed a small section of Babylon 7 into something the galaxy had never seen before, a Zerathian cultural embassy that actually welcomed visitors instead of intimidating them. The transformation had not been easy. When they first began their work, most species were too terrified of the Zerathians to even consider voluntary cooperation. Centuries of conquest and domination had created deep-seated fears that couldn't be overcome overnight. Their first breakthrough came with the Antarian Mining Consortium, whose asteroid operations had been under constant threat from space pirates. Traditional security companies were either too expensive or too corrupt to provide reliable protection. "What we're proposing," Marcus had explained during their initial meeting, "is a new kind of security arrangement. Instead of hiring guards who might abandon you when the price is right, you'd have a formal protection agreement with the Zerathian Empire." The Antarian representative, a nervous insectoid creature named KLXstar, had clicked his mandibles anxiously. "And what would stop the Zerathians from simply taking over our operations once they had ships in our territory?" Lyralii had leaned forward, her violet eyes sincere. "Because we're not interested in your asteroids. We're interested in proving that the Empire can be a partner instead of a conqueror. Your success becomes our success." The arrangement they negotiated was revolutionary. In exchange for protection from pirates and raiders, the Antarians agreed to provide energy-rich minerals that could serve as a food source for Zerathian warriors, eliminating their need to drain energy from unwilling victims. Both species benefited from the arrangement, and word of its success spread quickly through the galactic business community. Soon, other species began approaching the embassy with their own proposals. The Christech Corporation wanted Zerathian technology to help them explore dangerous star systems. The Healers Guild requested assistance in treating diseases that affected energy-based lifeforms. Even the Neutral Zone Patrol asked for help in mediating disputes between warring factions. Each successful collaboration built trust and demonstrated that cooperation could be more profitable than conquest. But their greatest challenge came when the Zephyrian Trade Alliance approached them with a request that tested the very limits of their new philosophy. The Zephyrians were a peaceful species whose homeworld sat directly in the path of an expanding criminal empire known as the Bloodstar Syndicate. Led by a ruthless warlord named Krex the Destroyer, the Syndicate had already conquered 12 star systems and showed no signs of slowing down. Princess Lyralii, Ambassador Zara of the Zephyrian Alliance, had said during an emergency meeting, "We've exhausted every diplomatic option. The Syndicate demands total surrender and the enslavement of our people. We're asking the Zerathian Empire to help us not as conquerors seeking territory, but as protectors defending the innocent." The request put Lyralii in an impossible position. Her father had given her 1 year to prove that cooperation could work, but he had never said she couldn't use military force when necessary. The question was whether defending the Zephyrians would be seen as protecting the weak or simply conquering territory under a different name. Marcus had spent 3 days studying every piece of intelligence about the Bloodstar Syndicate. The Zephyrians are right, he finally concluded. This isn't a territorial dispute or a trade disagreement. Krex is offering them the choice between slavery and extinction. No amount of diplomacy is going to change his mind. But if we use military force, Lyralii worried, Father will say I've proven his point about the universe being a place where only strength matters. Maybe, Marcus replied, but what's the alternative? Let an entire civilization be destroyed because we're afraid of being misunderstood? The debate raged for hours until Dr. Vasquez offered an unexpected perspective. You're both thinking about this wrong, she said. This isn't about whether force is sometimes necessary, of course it is. The question is what you do after you use it. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Syndicate's current territory. Look at their expansion pattern. Every system they've conquered has been strip-mined for resources and then abandoned. They're not building an empire, they're creating a wasteland. If you stop them, you're not conquering territory, you're performing galactic pest control. The solution they eventually implemented was both elegant and revolutionary. Instead of sending a traditional military force, Lyralii convinced her father to allow her to lead a joint task force composed of Zerathian warriors, Entarian mining ships, Babylon 7 security forces, and volunteers from a dozen other species. We're not going to conquer the Bloodstar Syndicate, she announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast. We're going to eliminate a threat to civilized space and then help rebuild what they've destroyed. Any species that wants to participate in the reconstruction will be welcome. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula, as historians would later call it, lasted only 6 hours. Krex's forces were formidable, but they had never faced a coordinated assault by multiple species working in perfect harmony. The Zerathian ships provided the heavy firepower, while Antarian vessels used their superior maneuverability to outflank enemy formations. Babylon 7 security forces coordinated communications and logistics, ensuring that the diverse fleet operated as a single, unified force. But it was the aftermath of the battle that truly made history. Instead of claiming the liberated territories for the Zerathian Empire, Lyralii announced that they would be returned to their original inhabitants, with the task force remaining only long enough to ensure stability and provide humanitarian aid. The galaxy watched in amazement as Zerathian warriors, beings who had been feared for millennia, helped rebuild hospitals, schools, and infrastructure on worlds that had been devastated by the Syndicate. Energy that had once been used to drain the life from enemies was redirected toward healing the wounded and restoring damaged ecosystems. Marcus found himself working alongside Dr. Vasquez to establish medical facilities on the liberated worlds. You know, he told Lyralii one evening as they watched Zerathian engineers help Zephyrian farmers restore their ruined crops, your father was right about one thing. The universe can be a dangerous place. But that doesn't mean we have to add to the danger. I think he's beginning to understand that, Lyralii replied. The messages from home have been different lately. less disapproving, more curious. Indeed, Emperor Vorthak had been watching his daughter's experiment with growing interest. The economic benefits of her new approach were becoming impossible to ignore. Trade agreements negotiated through cooperation were proving far more profitable than resources seized through conquest. Moreover, the empire was gaining a reputation that attracted voluntary allies rather than terrified subjects. The real test of their new approach came when the Galactic Council formally invited the Zerathian Empire to join as a full member, something that had never been offered to a conquering power before. "They're asking us to help write the laws that govern interstellar relations," Lyralii explained to her father during a secure communication. "They want Zerathian strength to be used to enforce peace rather than impose tyranny." Vorthak's response surprised everyone. "Schedule a formal state visit," he commanded. "It's time I saw this impossible dream of yours for myself." When the emperor arrived at Babylon 7 3 weeks later, he came not with a fleet of warships but with a single diplomatic vessel accompanied by cultural attaches and trade representatives. The symbolic gesture was not lost on the galactic community. His tour of the embassy and its various projects lasted 2 full days. He observed joint military exercises between Zerathian warriors and alien security forces. He attended trade negotiations where his daughter used diplomatic skill rather than threats to secure favorable agreements. He watched as Zerathian healing techniques were taught to medical students from dozens of species. But the moment that truly changed his perspective came during a visit to the station's refugee center. A group of young Zephyrian children who had been orphaned during the Syndicate's attacks had been brought to Babylon 7 for medical treatment. When they saw the fearsome emperor approaching, several of them ran forward, not in terror, but in excitement. Emperor Vorthak, a little girl named Sela called out. "Princess Lyralii told us about you. You're the one who helped save our families." The children surrounded him, chattering excitedly about the brave Zerathian warriors who had protected their world and helped rebuild their homes. For the first time in his long life, Vorthak found himself being greeted with joy rather than fear by representatives of a conquered species. That evening, as he shared dinner with Lyralii and Marcus in their private quarters, the emperor was unusually quiet. "Father," Lyralii asked gently, "what are you thinking?" Vorthak set down his goblet and looked directly at his daughter. "I am thinking that perhaps I was wrong about the nature of strength. For centuries, I believed that power meant the ability to take what you wanted from those too weak to stop you. But, watching you work, seeing the respect you've earned rather than demanded, this requires a different kind of strength entirely." He turned to Marcus. "You asked me to trust your vision of cooperation over conquest. At the time, I thought you were naive. But you've accomplished something I never could. You've made our former enemies grateful for our presence." "It was never just my vision," Marcus replied. "Lyralii showed me that change was possible. You gave us the chance to prove it. And hundreds of species chose to work with us instead of against us. None of us could have done this alone." Over the following months, the transformation of the Zerathian Empire accelerated beyond anyone's expectations. What had begun as one princess's romantic rebellion became a galaxy-wide revolution in diplomatic relations. The Empire's military forces were restructured as the Galactic Peace Corps, with joint training programs that brought together warriors from dozens of species. Trade agreements replaced tribute demands. Cultural exchange programs allowed young Zerathians to learn from other civilizations while sharing their own advanced knowledge. The change wasn't without challenges. Some of the older Zerathian nobles resisted the new policies, preferring the certainty of conquest to the complexity of cooperation. A few pliant species initially viewed the Empire's transformation with suspicion, wondering if it was merely a more subtle form of manipulation. But, as years passed and the benefits became undeniable, even the skeptics were forced to acknowledge that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful, more prosperous, and more unified than it had been in living memory. Lyralii and Marcus's marriage became a symbol of these broader changes. Their children, beautiful hybrid beings who combined human creativity with Zerathian strength, represented a new generation that would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was valued over domination. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they stood in the embassy's observation lounge watching ships from dozens of worlds arrive for a galactic trade conference, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that first meeting in his small cafe. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked Lyralii. "Giving up the life you could have had as a traditional Zerathian princess?" Lyralii smiled, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly where their second child was developing. "The life I could have had involved ruling through fear and spending eternity watching my people become increasingly isolated from the rest of the galaxy. This life." She gestured toward the bustling spaceport where Zerathian children played alongside young beings from dozens of other worlds. "This life is everything I never dared to dream was possible." Their story had become legend throughout the galaxy, the tale of an alien vampire princess who chose love over duty and, in doing so, discovered that love could be the greatest duty of all. But, for Marcus and Lyralii themselves, it was simply the story of two people who believed that understanding was stronger than fear, that cooperation was more powerful than conquest, and that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply choosing to trust in the possibility of something better. As they watched their adopted galaxy grow more peaceful with each passing day, they knew that their bold choice had not just changed their own lives, it had changed the course of history itself. The vampire princess and her human husband had proven that love could indeed bridge the gap between worlds, transforming an empire of conquerors into a force for unity and hope. And, in the end, that was the greatest conquest of all, not the conquest of territory or resources, but the conquest of fear and hatred by compassion and understanding. It was a victory that belonged not to any single species or empire, but to all the beings who had chosen to believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow. The crimson moon of Zerath still rose each night over the Imperial Palace, but now its light illuminated celebration rather than conquest, hope rather than fear. The galaxy had learned to see beauty in that alien glow, just as it had learned to see strength and gentleness and power in the choice to protect rather than destroy. In choosing each other, Marcus and Lyralii had given the galaxy a gift more precious than any treasure, the knowledge that love could indeed conquer all, even the vast distances between the stars.